Hey, what's up guys, it is I, Mark Yoon, and today I bring another hopefully exciting video. So today's video is brought to you by Hana no Kokoro. So I wanted to ask you guys for topics to talk about for this week's video, and one of the topics that I received was, who do I think the heroes or what the main roles are going to be played in Soul Calibur 7? So let's just jump right into that right now. So obviously, since Soul Calibur 7 is a sequential sequel to Soul Calibur 6, which is in fact a reboot of the timeline that started from Soul Calibur 1. We're going to have events rolling out that way. The events are not going to be rolled out the same way that they were in Soul Calibur 2 and 3. In fact, the timeline has already reached past Soul Calibur 2 or into Soul Calibur 2's time span in Soul Calibur 7. So what we're going to be doing is having a completely new branching timeline that's completely different from the last timeline. So don't expect to see like Zasalamel turn evil, and don't expect to see like any events that happened from Soul Calibur 2, so on and so forth. So basically what we have canon so far is all the events that were mentioned from Soul Edge and Soul Blade and everything that we saw transpire in Soul Calibur 6, including Libra of Souls. So what I want to get into today is who do I think the main protagonists are going to be in Soul Calibur 7. So, Soul Calibur is a very interesting series because it's not a series that's headlined by one individual protagonist. There's always like groups of protagonists doing their own thing, especially when it comes to branching storylines and things of that nature. We have Mitsurugi, the wandering samurai, who's usually the head up of the narrative, trying to get into trouble, as he has been since the very first Soul Blade. We have Hwang Sung-young working behind the scenes now with his new mysticism powers and talisman, trying to take down evil from that sideline and that side point. We also have separate side stories of characters like Raphael and Amy and all that. So the main ones that I'm going to be going over today is I'm probably going to say who are the top 3 that it's going to be including. And the top 3 I'm going to say are Mitsurugi, probably Raphael, and then I'm guessing either Cassandra or Siegfried. I think I might lump them into one. I'm not exactly sure. But those are like off the top of my head who I think it's going to be rolling from, just based on the narration and where it was going from the end of Season 2. So, like I said before, Mitsurugi is always the... he is the window into us, into our viewpoint of things. The audience viewpoint and take, because he's kind of like dumb. Not saying we're dumb, just saying that like you can insert intelligence into him because we're kind of following the story through his eyes and adversely through ours. Just kind of like going on his own way to try and find powerful opponents in like a kind of Goku style, and just end up getting into these situations that are involved with the swords. Not necessarily seeking out things, such as how Siegfried used to when trying to remove Nightmare from himself. But Mitsurugi is probably going to be the main eyes going through our focal point to try and come into adventures. And then on the side, we're probably going to have Sophitia, Sophitia's sister, Cassandra, actually, because Sophitia has kind of settled down in the end of this one, going in a completely new direction that she was from the last timeline. She's settling down much earlier, leading to the fact that Patroclus and Pyrrha are probably not going to be her children. It's probably going to be a whole new child. It might not even be a named child. It might not even be someone that may be playable in the future. It just might become a narration standpoint and have Cassandra moving forward in her stead with her mission. Now that she's settling down with a family, unless something happens to that family, in which we'll probably see her come back into the fray. I don't know how that would look. That's too far down the line, so I just want to stick to 7's points. Cassandra's probably going to be on an adventure trying to ascertain like the power of Soul Calibur, just so the fact that she can find these missing shards, as well as everybody else that's kind of going against the Swords and the Shepherds, and Ishka Oct and her whole crew, just so that her sister will not get tangled up into it, because I think Cassandra's main focus right now is her sister's well-being and her sister's future and the future of her future niece and nephew. So I think that that's going to be her role, and she's definitely going to get intertangled into the main plot as well as Mitsurugi. Now, Taki can also play a large role, but I think it's going to be more of a side role, where she's probably going to be doing something in the background, and she's going to stumble across the main group as she's coming across her thing. We're going to have kind of like a divide and conquer scenario, where most of the main heroes are going to be split out on their own adventures that are intertwining with each other and then come together towards the conclusion. And I'm expecting this part to be at least a trilogy, so we're probably going to get left with some kind of cliffhanger just like we did in Season 2. I think the other main protagonist that we're going to have is probably going to be Siegfried. And Siegfried's always kind of there, but he does play a background note character more often than not these days, so I think that he is going to be in the back trying to stir up some kind of rebellion to try and go against the forces of Ishka-Ak. That way he can like prevent the birth or rebirth into this universe of Algol. And in doing so, he's just going to do his own thing like he always does. Now, the rest of the heroes, obviously Raphael is going to have a large role to play because we've seen Amy turning into Viola, or the plans to turn Amy into Viola in her Soul Chronicle in Soul Calibur 6. So when we see that happening, like, we obviously know that Viola and Zwei, who's also mentioned in the encyclopedia in Soul Calibur 6, are going to be part of the Swords and Shepherds. And whether they step away from that group and join the good side in this game or not is still unknown to me. But I'm sure Raphael is going to try to go on his own mission to try and rescue Amy from whatever supposed conjecture or magic that she's going to be intertwined with in becoming Viola. Especially with like the new coming of Curtis, and now semi-malfested the similar way that Grow was, because we have Grow and his story doing that as well, coming back. And then we're going to have the whole continuation of our story, which is what Libra of Souls took over. By the way, if you didn't play Libra of Souls, you kind of need to play it, because like there's a lot of lore and half of the story is wrapped up into that mode. Like pretty much our created character in that mode is like what ties everything in the story together. So you really need to go back and play that mode if you haven't, and it should give you some play through and some good stuff to do until Soul Calibur 7 comes out anyway, because we're pretty much the crux of this whole story, what comes together. So, all in all, I want to say that like there is a lot of characters in Soul Calibur that can be considered like the hero, and there's no necessarily main hero. I mean, if you're going by Soul Blade, like the very first game, the two main characters were Mitsurugi and Hwang Sung-gyung. It was Mitsurugi and then Hwang Sung-gyung in certain countries because Japan invaded those countries and they didn't want a Japanese main character for sales, so blah, blah, blah. So, not to just gloss over that, but that's a lot of geopolitical stuff to get into in just a video about video games. So, Hwang Sung-gyung and Mitsurugi have always been considered like the quote-unquote main characters of the franchise. They've always been the lead roles that kind of forwarded the narrative. Now, everybody can make positive or negative arguments as to who the other main characters are. I've heard some people say Siegfried, which is understandable. I've heard some people say Sophitia. I've heard some people say even Ivy, which she plays more of a background role, so I don't really consider her too much of a main character. But I guess if you're coming down to the four characters that I would say who are the main characters, it would be Mitsurugi, Hwang Sung-gyung, though his role is totally different from the last timeline, Siegfried, and Sophitia. Those are like pretty much like the main characters from which the stories are usually told. Now again, like I said, Siegfried has played a lot more of a back role than he used to play, so I think because they know that his story's played out with the whole Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing of him just like being Nightmare, discovering that and trying to like strip himself of the Nightmare sword, Soul Edge. I think that's like a little overplayed from the last timeline, so that's why they're doing something different with him. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Who do you think is going to be the main antagonist for Soul Calibur, or protagonist for Soul Calibur 7? Or do you think it's going to be a similar Soul Calibur situation where it's going to be all split up like it usually has been, and we have like just all focal points all over the place? Any and all thoughts are always welcome in the comment section down below. I want to thank you guys for watching and taking the time to stay here and chat with me. And as I always said, I love it. Thank you.
And thank you.